The housing supply crisis heightens. People are almost willing to eat the paint off the siding of an available home just to get inside to take a look at it. We're going to talk about the what's, the whys, and just how bad is it. Hi, I'm Keith Weinhold. This is Get Rich Education. Over half of American homes are now selling for more than the asking price. This includes homes that might have been overpriced to begin with. This is all homes. This is homes that aren't even ready to be shown very well. This is homes that might have an old boat with a blue tarp covering it out in the front yard. So therefore, if you bid just the asking price for a home, chances are that you drop below the middle of the pack. Let's take a look at the housing inventory here. This is the active listing count. So this is a number of available homes in the United States plotted over time. We haven't looked at this in a couple months. Historically, it's been between 1 and 1.5 million available homes at any given time. The housing inventory, well, we've been loathing down here around 1/2 million homes available at any given time, and that really hasn't changed. That really hasn't improved, despite builders and everyone else being aware that we need more housing. And this shows, by the way, all single-family homes, including townhomes and condo listings here. This is all of those things. Now, the NAR recently told us just how many more homes that we need to be brought into balance. Now, a lot of people didn't really know what this number was. We had an old Freddie Mac figure where we knew we were at least 2.5 million housing units short. Well, the NAR recently came out in this Business Insider article here, just published the other day, and they let us know that we are a whopping 6.8 million housing units undersupplied. And we only have 1/2 million available now. So what would it take? Something like 13x or 14x the current availability for that amount in order to get saturated and bring the housing market back into balance. It's not going to happen anytime soon. We're going to soon talk about how long it will take us to get that back into balance and clear this housing supply crisis that continues. Now, the two biggest home builders in the United States, they've been either one or two for a number of years, are Lennar and D.R. Horton. And Lennar builds an awful lot of middle-class homes. These homes around 400 to 450K. So they're really building a lot of the product type that's desirable today. Well, Lennar executives recently said that they're cautious with ramping up building due to overall concerns in the material supply chain. And with this uncertain delivery of materials and high demand, Lennar is, quote, choosing to sell homes later in the construction cycle in order to increase margins. That's what their co-CEO said. Now, let's look at a smaller builder. So that surely didn't bode well, but let's look at what a smaller builder is doing in one of the hotter housing markets in the nation, Boise, Idaho. Steve Martinez opened up the financial books of his construction company. It's called Tradewinds General Contracting. He opened that up to Bloomberg News to reveal the magnitude of the astounding cost surges that builders are having to weather. Just listen to about how crazy this is and all the volatility in the pricing of the individual components that go into these homes. This is almost ludicrous. Martinez has had to raise prices on some of the houses that he builds, especially this Baybrook model, a 3,000 square foot ranch home that he builds an awful lot of, where he has had to make difficult conversations with buyers, as he's put it. Now, it's a nice enough looking 3,000 square foot ranch home, and I don't know the lot size here, but it's certainly nothing luxurious. So let's break down some of the components and just look at the whopping cost increases that have taken place here, largely due to supply chain disruption. Before we get into components, let's look at the overall price, okay? And we're going to compare 2019 to this year, 2021. So we're going to look at pricing over a 2-year stretch because last year there were so many aberrations in society and the economy. So looking at a 2-year stretch here, back in 2019, these Baybrook 3,000 square foot ranch homes sold for $472K. That was the list price. Today, it's $747K for these homes. The same homes. That's a 58% price increase. So don't buy these with a small down payment for cash flowing rentals. That's not what we're talking about here, but we're just going ahead and getting an idea of the cost increase looking at the same model of home over 2 years here. The cost of the foundation and concrete slabs has fully doubled from 16K to 32K. The lumber that goes into one of these homes has increased from 29K up to 105K, a 262% increase. Now, the lumber cost has come down somewhat. Lumber always seems to be that headline component that makes a lot of news. This surge in lumber prices, and by the way, understand it's not a surge in timber prices, it's a surge in lumber prices that's greatly increasing the cost of these homes. Timber becomes lumber when it's delivered to the mill and it's cut and treated. That is the difference between timber and lumber. It's not a timber shortage, it's a lumber shortage. The trusses, which are those triangle-shaped pieces that make up the roof, the cost of those has increased in one of these typical homes from 12K up to 29K. That's a 146% increase in the cost of these wood trusses. Drywall and insulation. And by the way, I'm just rounding a lot of these dollar figures to the nearest thousand. That has increased from 21K up to 27K for a 26% price increase over the last 2 years. That actually sounds like a modest price hike compared to some of these other component cost increases that we're talking about here. The cost of pipes and wires has gone up 49% to 42K. The paint, just the paint, is up 68% to 16K. The finish items inside, like the trim and the cabinets, that's also up 68% to 53K for those items. The cost of appliances has gone from $4,000 up to $6,500. That's a 2-year total increase of 65%. And like I said, in total, over 2 years, the builder selling price has gone from $472K to $747K. Oh, and that excludes the cost of the lot. We're only talking about the home itself here, not a giant home, a ranch home. Just staggering stuff. That ends the case study. Now, we have the numbers in through May for what the median sale price is nationally. It's now $377,000. That's not for a new home, that's new and existing homes. That's up 26% year over year. And this strikes a lot of people as odd because this is coming off a recession. So what's really going on here? What's the short story in why homes are selling like crazy, especially these detached single family homes? Well, it's more than just low interest rates that continue to persist and be below 3%, which is where they're still at today. Therefore, it's easier to absorb the higher cost of a home because most people actually don't buy a home based on the price. They buy a home based on the monthly payment. The other thing that's happened is a lot of people that tended to keep their jobs and maintain their jobs, they tended to be those knowledge-based workers that could work from home. And not all of them are going to go back to the office. So now that they're using Zoom, they really are enjoying their detached home because now they're doing more stuff from home than they ever have before. Previously, they might have been watching their kids from home. Now they're working from home. Now they've gotten the routine of working out from home. That's really driven up this demand for these detached single-family homes, which is largely what we're talking about here, and that we have the great undersupply of and the great demand for. Just think about the typical resident of, say, the Chelsea neighborhood in Manhattan. And they're 45 years old, and say they plan to move to Florida and retire when they're 65. Well, now they've decided, hey, I can move to Florida when I'm 45. I don't have to wait until I'm 65. Even though Zoom existed 5 years ago, I was using it 5 years ago, most people weren't. It's really just this awareness that you can now do this and work remotely. So why would you continue to pay thousands of dollars for your one-bedroom efficiency in the Chelsea neighborhood of Manhattan when you can go work from the Tampa Bay area and have a 3-bed, 2-bath home and pay just $1,800 rent for it or outright buy it yourself? Now, with this surge in home prices, I just told you they shot up 26% year over year. What happens when prices continue to stretch out there? And they've got to taper off sometime. No one expects a housing crash. Supply is too low. But the rate of price increase has got to cool off sometime. But as prices continue to stretch out there, one thing that happens is renting appears to be a comparatively better deal. And some people that are just on the brink and want to be that first-time home buyer and can no longer stretch it out there at that higher price are forced to rent. Rental demand is now beginning to increase. It's not quite keeping up proportionally with the increase in housing prices, but it's getting there. In fact, here in this CNBC article, CoreLogic tells us that single-family rents are now up 5.3% year over year, but detached single-family homes, meaning not townhomes, they are up 7.9% in rent amount, and that's just nationally. Now, for a real estate investor that's buying a property for the production of income, this is really important because the most key simple ratio in what makes an income property profitable is your rent to value ratio. That might also be called your rent to price ratio, one or the other. So as prices continue to run up higher and rents don't keep up proportionally, that makes a negative impact on one's cash flow. It's just a really simple ratio, your ratio of rent income to purchase price or value. Of course, a ratio that simple doesn't say everything that you need to know. That doesn't say anything about property taxes or mortgage interest rates or anything else. But pressure has been put on the rent to value ratio. And this is what typically happens. Rents lag behind the housing price increase. And then when housing prices cool or even flatten out, rents do then eventually catch up. So that's the general correlation between rents and prices over time. What else can I say about the housing demand now that we've talked about supply? Population growth continues to be a phenomena in the United States. Population growth over each of the past few years has been about 0.5%. It was less than that last year. That was an aberration with everything that was going on. So in a nation of about 330 million people, that means we have about 1.5 to 2 million new residents every year. They've all got to live somewhere. That's why that demand keeps coming. It's births minus deaths, and then you have to factor in migration as well. And a lot of people think with the presidential administration that we have now, that's going to open up wider doors to migration over time. Yes, even more housing need. It is about more than just supply and demand. You can't just broad brushstroke supply and demand. You also have to factor in capacity to pay. A lot of economists overlook that. So what's capacity to pay? Well, just imagine the example of if you're dying of thirst in the desert, you would have a very high demand for a glass of water. And if there is just one glass of cool water available to you in the desert to quench your thirst and save your life, you still need the capacity to pay for that water if someone's going to sell it to you. So it's more about just supply and demand. At some point, prices have got to run up so much that wages no longer keep up proportionally, and therefore housing price increases have got to cool sometime. You need that capacity to pay. And you can't just print homes. This is shelter. This is something that you can't just snap your fingers and print more of like we're doing with dollars. And part of the reason that prices are going up is we're injecting trillions of dollars into the economy. So we have a high supply of dollars and a low supply of homes, and that continues to make home prices go up as well. All these injections of money into the economy stoking asset prices. This is a really serious problem. Think about it. This is the United States of America, where I live, where I'm coming from now. Many people consider it to be the greatest country in the world. We have the strongest military in the world. We have the biggest brand in the world, if you think about it that way. And yet the three human essentials, food, shelter, and safety, here this greatest nation in the world is faltering because we don't even have adequate shelter for all of our residents. So this is a real problem. So how are we looking at solving the problem? Well, builders can still solve the problem, but it's going to take a Herculean effort, and it could very well take an entire decade such that supply gets up to the level of demand again where we need it. Residential construction would need to accelerate to an annual pace of about 2 million new housing units built per year. And to give you some idea, last year in 2020, 1.3 million housing units were built. So we need to accelerate the rate at which we're bringing supply on the market by 60% and hold that for about 10 years just to get back to normal. So in conclusion, it could be a tough decade ahead. And this housing supply crisis problem is really about the worst for two groups of people: that prospective first-time homebuyer that's being priced out and has to rent, and also the homeless, because there's now a higher bar to clear just to get in and either own or rent a home of any kind. You are a profiteer if you've been following my plan. I've been talking for 7 years on the Get Rich Education podcast about how the opportunity is great for buying these 1 to 4 door properties, single family homes up to fourplexes. Stick with residential. The home continues to be the center of the world. And with what happened last year in the world, it really accelerated that phenomenon. You've just never been more of a profiteer if you've been following my plan. So whatever you do, don't eat the paint off the siding of a home. Keep hanging in there. I will continue to keep you updated with what's happening with the housing supply crisis. I'm Keith Weinhold. This is Get Rich Education. Thanks so much for stopping by.